we've had a bit of a landscape shift in the world of Counter-Strike of late, particularly as it pertains to something dear to my heart, the world of journalistic coverage, and that is that the esports winter, which I think a lot of people thought we were kind of getting out of, we were getting away from the esports winter, a lot of layoffs had been had. I think what people were kind of assuming was, there was going to be a plateauing, a lull, and then maybe next year beyond there would be a period of growth. But that isn't the case. We are still seeing, particularly in the world of media and content creation, a number of layoffs and downsizing, and in some case closures. And so obviously this has now come to the world of Better Collective. If you don't know who Better Collective are, Better Collective were a digital sports media group that had a particular penchant for sports betting. They have like a portfolio of sports media and sports betting platforms. And they came in, and it was kind of controversial when they bought out HLTV, because people were like, oh, well, HLTV is now being owned by a betting company. It's kind of not the full story, if we're being honest about it. That was a take that lacked nuance and factual information, so not a surprise that esports fans were proliferating that. But ultimately, there were some concerns about what it could mean, because obviously, when platforms that have sports betting when companies that have sports betting platforms in their portfolio buy news websites, people can sort of see how the line might start to blur, and there can be some fears about coverage. But anyway, at the start, it seemed to be doing particularly well. It enabled HLTV to put a number of writers on salary and increase their salaries, which is something they didn't have the financial clout to do prior to the buyout. And also, they created jobs by expanding into a number of territories under the Dust 2 whatever vertical, and they had a Dust to Brazil, a Dust to India, a Dust to US, and a Dust to Sweden. I don't think I'm missing any out. And of course, each one of those websites has to have an editor, at least one, has to have a staff writer, at least one, and obviously they have to be paid. Oh yeah, and of course Denmark. How could I miss out Dust2.dk, the classic one where we got the Nicola Nyholm posts from. So obviously that's really good, and you can sort of understand there is a benefit, I would say, to if you are creating a portfolio of coverage sites. There's a benefit to having ones in the native language of the significant audiences within whichever sport or industry it is that you cover, and that obviously applies to CS. There's a huge community, I would say. It's going to be the untapped potential. Once we've got bored of the Middle East, we're all going to be going back to take a run at the Indian market, and that's a given. Obviously, Denmark, it may not be the largest country, but in terms of how widespread an understanding of esports is among its populace, I would say it's probably in the top percentile. Like, if you were to go on the streets and ask the average person, do you know what esports is? I imagine almost every Danish person, irrespective of age, would say yes. I would also imagine if you were to ask even people 50 years old in Denmark, have you heard of Astralis? Do you know who Device is? There's a very high chance that they'll say yes as well, which certainly isn't true in like the UK. Do you know who Henry G is? No, it's not happening. Do you know who Richard Lewis is? Oh yeah, I know him. Know him from all the wicked politics stuff he does his YouTube, and he used to have that producer that laughed. I know him. That Henry G, not so much. You know what I mean? But obviously, if you ask, there's no players to ask about, really, is there? But Sweden, is another one I would say that has a very high saturation, right? But other places, not so much. Certainly NA, for being one of the largest markets, in terms of the average American, remember, lived out there for a long time, knowing what esports is and being able to name esports teams even, it's tiny. It is a fraction. You go to big cities and you never see esports jerseys. You know, it's only the very young in America, and even then, a subset of them, usually the more affluent youth, that know what esports is. It's a very tiny percentage. So anyway, I understand why you might want to cater to that to try and change that, but baked into that paradigm is the problem that if not a lot of people know about esports, then not a lot of people are going to know about your website, and not a lot of people are going to come to your website, and not a lot of people are going to care about your website. And I hate to break it to everyone, the old models of digital media just don't work. They don't work. The days of click-through ads are over. You see it now on every media platform you go to. Please don't use ad block. Can you promise you're not going to make your fucking website look like a neon fucking nightmare because you're promoting Cyberpunk that fucking week? Or can you stop pop-ups like the bad old days of telling me if I smash the iPhone, I win one? No, you can't guarantee that. And unfortunately, until you can guarantee that, people are going to keep using ad blocker. By the way, ad blocker itself has become essentially a mafia shakedown, which I know I'm boring you with some minutiae here, but it's really to pad out the video, and you might find it interesting if you're a journalist or an aspiring journalist. But anyway, Adblock itself is a media mafia shakedown now, a media mafia shakedown. Why? Because you can get whitelisted, and if they whitelist your ads, then they don't block them, and you can pay as an advertiser to have your ads approved by the thing that blocks ads, irrespective of your consumers that use Adblock. The reason more companies don't do it is, one, they're super resentful. Two, they'd rather spend money on the tech to bypass ad block, which they do regularly. YouTube are doing that right now, for instance, and it's almost like a antivirus war going on between YouTube and ad block right now. And the other aspect is the price is generally seen to be disproportionately high for what you get. So, you know, there's alternatives like uBlock. Yeah, obviously I'm aware. I'm a media student. I'm very savvy about these things. But anyway, so in terms of serving ads, very hard to serve ads to guarantee. Like, let me explain how an ad spend works, and then we'll I promise we'll get to the meat of the story. How an ad spend works, just in case you're unaware, is if I'm a company, typically not the company with the product to sell, but rather a third-party agency, I go out to a website and I say, I want to do an ad spend, run an ad campaign on your website, and we are looking for in the region of, 50,000 views, 100,000 views, whatever it might be, and we believe that it is worth this amount. You then typically will say, yes, we can do that, we can put you on a rotation. If you look at our traffic stats here, we can guarantee that the 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, million, whatever it is you want, we can guarantee that we can serve those ads in this time for that money. And they go, okay, and that's when you get the ads, and that's why every time you press F5, sometimes it's a different ad. Sometimes ads are, more preferential in terms of how frequent they come up. That's because of the ad spend. That's because of how much they want. Now, what companies have been doing, and this is why another reason why advertisers are getting reluctant. Facebook were found guilty of doing this in court. How you count an ad deliverable, i.e. one person seeing the ad, that in itself can be arcane, dark magic. For instance, what Facebook would do is if you scrolled down your feed and there was an ad in the feed, even if you scroll past it at a speed your brain wouldn't even clock what the advertisement was for, Facebook counted that as a deliverable. There's been a lot of talk about Twitter doing something similar. When you look at a video and you look at how many views it has, and you go, that can't be right. Millions on that. Even sometimes on my own stuff when I post, you get tens of thousands of views, and it just doesn't feel right because it's got 6 comments under it and 5 retweets. So how did 50,000 people see it? Well, that's a question Twitter will likely have to answer to advertisers at some point in the not too distant future. So anyway, that serving of an ad is worth money, but people can't serve up enough ads to get money. Unrelated, Twitch are about to hit their own problem with this, which, I've kind of seen some bits and pieces to this because that's a story I'm working on at the moment. But Twitch are about to hit their own problem with this. They are begging streamers to run ads. They are begging them to do it. They are offering you a salary now. If you're a partnered streamer, you can choose to take a set amount of money every month as long as you guarantee every month you will hit X amount of ads, played. And so most people like me, I just like to talk, and I don't like to break up my shit by clicking on an ad. Everyone's told me, even my Twitch manager has told me, oh, you should just play one ad on a stream. You'll make loads of money. Probably true. Just something I don't do. I just rely on the subs and the donations and everything. This isn't my primary source of income. So they're having real problems right now because they're not only under-delivering, they're having to pay to incentivize people to run the ads. There's a reason, by the way, now when you watch like a stream of an esports event, an ad might pop up in the middle of a crucial round. That's not the tournament operators doing that. It is Twitch sending out the ads as part of the agreement they've got with the companies. So this is just where Twitch are at right now. And look, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of it here. Maybe it's fair enough. Maybe Twitch should make it compulsory that you have to run ads if you want to use their service. After all, this is a service that I get for free. I'm a broadcaster through Twitch with the tools they've given me. And I get Twitch Primes off the back of that, and I reach you as a Twitch user off the back of that. Maybe it's totally fine that I should have to run, 50 ads a month or whatever it might work out as just to keep using this service. Maybe not. Maybe that's antithetical to what Twitch is supposed to be about. I don't really know. But what I do know is Twitch is lying to you when they pretend they don't have a problem, because they absolutely do. And that's why, for instance, the high cost in Korea, and they pulled out there. There was no way to ever make a return on that. Anyway, back to what we're talking about. So, look, digital media is in the toilet, and anyone that goes into digital media and thinks they're going to make money off the old ways of doing things, that's not how it works. There's a lot more money in synergistic partnerships and promotions and sponsored content, which, of course, that is the anathema of free and open journalism. You always have to walk this tightrope with it. But that's where the money's at in that kind of thing. And yes, also, if you happen to be a website that has the matches on a ticker, yeah, maybe promoting some betting as well. Potentially companies in the same portfolio. Anyway, all of which is to say, Better Collective, the empire has started to crumble just a little bit. And I'm going to lament the loss of some good journalists, and we will get to that. But first, before we do get to that, why don't we start with someone that I'm not going to shed any tears for, because, yeah, I've got some opinions about this. So let's start here. My old friend, literally Ryan friend, formerly known as Ryan at Rushby Media and then Ryan at Dust 2. He was one of the casualties of this. Now, look, I'm going to say some things. I think not a lot of people might fuck with this. Some might call this vindictive, cruel, petty, whatever. But that's the way I am, so that's what's going to get said. But it's not that. It really isn't that. I'm just joking. What this is, I as a journalist of over 20 years experience in and out of esports, as an award winner, as someone that's worked as an editor, I'm going to just say this. First of all, Ryan never really learned what editorial standards are. And if you remember, even recently, I was criticizing him for slipping in details, around the Maniac coverage. Now, covering sexual assault and matters of that nature, there has to be a sensitivity and an understanding about the importance of the story. And what you cannot do is overload the buffet of the allegation buffet with things that don't meet the threshold of sexual assault because you want to get somebody or get clicks or have more more salacious headlines. What you do is you sensitively tell the stories that need to be told, and anything that isn't up to the threshold of what the victims want to talk about, you don't publish, because you're droning out their voices, potentially giving people ammunition to discredit them. And on top of that, you are saying lesser offences are equivalent tacitly. When you do this, you shouldn't water it down. And so he did that, and he did that with the Maniac coverage. By Maniac, he went, and also in other crimes and misdemeanors, Maniac messaged a 17-year-old and saying, do you feel good about being 18 soon? Now look, I got no doubt in my mind that Maniac was slipping in them DMs a little bit ahead of schedule, getting her primed for whatever fucking machinations he had. But is that the same as groping a bunch of women at an after party? No, it fucking isn't. So, maybe we'll shelve that for now, yeah? Shelve that for today, mate. So none of this is Ryan's fault. You have to understand the history. When Ryan set up Rush B Media, Ryan was pretty much his own boss. I don't know what formal training he had, but remember, Rush B Media was the publication that, under his editorial watch, took some speculation from an episode of By the Numbers, published it as a thing that was totally going to happen the next day, just coincidentally, and then had to walk it back, and they were totally wrong. And that's 100% what they did, no matter how much they tried to spin it. So look, an editor would have caught that. An editor is ultimately responsible for every time a publication is wrong. And I want to know, what did you do about that writer? How did you educate that writer? But no, there's none of that there. The problem with Ryan, unfortunately, is he's too invested in there are good esports people and bad esports people, and bad esports people are always bad and wrong and bad. Did I mention bad? Because they might be Trump voters and shit, right? But there are good esports people like me and my friends, and we are always right and good and will only do good things. Like, editorially, your brain cannot be that fucked, unfortunately. And so I have a particular dog in the fight, so to speak, because there was a guy called Tolkien Fanatic, and Tolkien Fanatic used to run dust2.us, and he was a really good news man. He had the 2 thumbs up, stamp of approval, good journalist from me. I'm saying he was a good editor. I'm saying he was a good newsman. He had good news sensibilities. He never was salacious. He never was clickbait. He just liked to write up the fucking news. And he liked to make it accurate, and he cared, and he understood the craft. And he was just a great all-round guy and a wonderful ambassador for what esports journalism can be, particularly at a time when we're losing so many good journalists. That happening in parallel with the rise of Saudi Arabian ownership. The comedy isn't lost on me. But anyway, Better Collective, when they came in, they fired Tolkien Fanatic because in what their assessment was, Ryan would be better at understanding the current zeitgeist and getting more traffic. So in other words, they fired a good newsman for a clickbait merchant, deliberately, purposefully, and that's who they wanted to install as their editor. And by the way, if you were to go to dust2.us, any clickbait headline, anything that you were like, fucking hell, right? Look how they've written that up. It was always Ryan's name on it. And he had carte blanche to do that over there. That's what they wanted. So it is kind of funny they've now deemed him surplus to requirements, honestly. Yeah. It's like it wasn't a good choice to begin with. By the way, while Chris J went off on his fucking demented racist rant the other day, Ryan Friend from Rush B Media, he was like that fucking meme trying to find a reason to write that up on fucking dust2.us. Must have fucking killed him, must have broke his spine trying to restrain himself. It's like, ex-Dutch pro, irrelevant, washed, tweeting racism. Oh, how can I make this about USCS Blues? Oh, because that's just who he is. It was literally the first thing I thought. I nearly tweeted it, but I also thought I don't want to highlight the garbage Chris is saying. So whatever. Fuck it. So anyway, he's gone, and here it is. And by the way, just because he is who he is, I remember Slasher invited him out when I was in New York for the Knicks game. And I would have totally hung out, by the way. I'm a chill hang. Like, it's as simple as that. Unless you're a sea hag. Unless you're a sea hag or someone calling me a fraud, I'm a chill hag. Right? And he was like, I would never. It's just like so fucking cringe, bro. Like, whatever. Anyway, after a year of underperformance by Better Collective, they have decided to do layoffs this year. Remember, Better Collective is the company that gave him carte blanche, endorsed his editorial vision, and fired a perfectly good journalist so he could have that job. And now it's like, well, fuck Better Collective. Yeah, of course, mate. Of course. Like, no self-reflection. Never be self-reflection from this guy. They have decided to do layoffs this year. I have been affected, and I'm no longer part of the BC HLTV Dust 2 team going forward. I'm certainly in shock after years of continued growth in Dust 2 and hitting our goals. The HLTV team has been nothing but amazing, supportive and helpful in allowing Dust 2 to grow into a beautiful beast and allowing me to pursue a passion. I'll actively be looking for employment in the esports space, so please hit me up. I have a resume available on request. So let's see where he ends up. I doubt it'll be a journalism job. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes next, right? But I just thought this was hilarious, the irony of it, you know. Tolkien Fanatic had done nothing wrong, except he didn't understand clickbait to the same degree as you. You come in, you've hit your targets, well done. But you know what? Hitting targets, that don't mean dick. It don't mean dick. You got to make money. And you were on a very decent salary for the job you were doing. So, whatever, man. Now, because he is who he is, and as I said, like, it's just cringe. Like, also, just as another story, I did the Mustache Masters. That's a charity event. I went on and gave my time to this charity event. It's about men's mental health. It's done in Movember. It's about men's mental health and other male charities. And I went on there, and he said to everyone else on the broadcast, I won't be present for any moment that Richard is. Like, what do you think happens if we're on camera at the same time, bro? Do you think my evil, like, alt-right politics, like, yes, let the hatred and bigotry flow, yeah, you think that's how it works, blood? It's like, fuck me, it's for charity, just sit there, talk civilly for an hour, it's not a big deal. But it's just who he is. So he announced this, and then he immediately went protected on Twitter. So this is a period of time I'm seeking employment, but only my followers can message me. Fuck me, good riddance. Now, obviously, other people were affected. Better people, better journalists. And that I am sad about. One such case that I'm particularly upset about. My boy M&M's. 6 years in the esports journalism trenches, one of the few upcoming journalists, particularly covering North America, right, that was willing to roll up their sleeves and get really into the dirt, into the filth, into the swamp, dare I say, and gone, all gone. And as you can see as well, he's posted a black and white photo of himself, which is just like, again, it's all this on the timeline. No, Jeff, he's dead. Oh, no, he's just been fired. It's okay. Shit. Oh, gonna miss you. So it was one of them. Jeff. Oh, he's just been fired. It's okay. But anyway, it's a big deal. It is a big deal for Jeff. I'm sure as well. He loves his job. He's passionate about his work. And honestly, when you get fired from a journalism job, there are little perks. There's not many. But there are little perks that you come to take for granted a little bit. For instance, when you get sent to events. It was always my favourite part about the job. Going and travelling to events, seeing everyone that, you might not talk to in a few months, getting to watch the tournament, sinking in the atmosphere, being hunched over a fucking keyboard in the press room, seeing all your other fellow journalists, calling Hellspawn a cunt. So many treasured memories. And obviously he's going to be feeling pretty sad. So I forgive him. I forgive him the black and white photograph of death. I do forgive him that. And by the way, not that it will help in any way, shape, or form, given the way the industry's going. But this is a total vouch from Richard Lewis. I absolutely vouch for this guy. Anyone who hires this guy is getting a fucking bona fide, great journalist, hard worker, really nice guy, never going to be embroiled in any bullshit, never going to tweet anything crazy, just a hard worker, just everything you need in a newsroom. There was a couple more posts from him, and you kind of probably understand the black and white photo if you read them. On a personal note, I'm completely heartbroken by recent news, as our editor-in-chief was recently laid off, and my plans to attend the major were cancelled. I don't know what the future holds for me and Dust 2, but I'm proud of my efforts to help uplift NACS and provide high-quality coverage. And I thought this is a nice gesture from Better Collective. I've been offered to stay on with my current salary until the end of the year, with which I hope to cover NA's run at the Shanghai Major with the same level of dedication and quality that Dust2.us is known for. After that, we will see what happens. So, you know, as I said, total vouch from me. Definitely hire him. The good news is, Note wasn't effective, but you can see he's put up also, he's done a quote tweet of the death photograph. Heartbreaking, couldn't happen to a less deserving person. I worked closely with him when he joined Dust2.us, and I've seen the passion and effort he put in over 6 years. Anyone would be lucky to have him. So there's maybe a chance HLTV could find some work for him to do. Let's hope. He's got to be a prime candidate for that kind of thing, but we shall wait and see. Anyway, they were pretty explicit in what was happening. In fact, what we'll do first is there was another site that was shut down entirely, and that was the Swedish vertical of Dust 2. The editor was fired, and the site unceremoniously shut down. Dust 2 ceases operations. Hello, Sweden. A year ago, we welcomed you to Dust2.se with high hopes and dreams about the future. Today, unfortunately, we will shut down the website and cancel everything we had planned for the future. This is due to circumstances beyond our control that have forced us to cut costs to ensure long-term success, and it will affect Dust2.se in the worst possible way, as the whole page will cease operations from today. I want to thank the whole team that has worked very hard to make this a success. Unfortunately, we just don't have time to build the site that we planned from the beginning when we launched Dust2.se. Thanks to Kala, Quacker, Sales, Lars, and everyone else who's been part of Dust2. You did a very good job, and I wish you only the best for the future. And there we have it. Also, just golden staring into your soul there. Now, I'll say probably the Swedish vertical might have been the hardest one to make stick, even though Sweden is very esports savvy, because there are long-standing Swedish coverage sites that people might reflexively go to just because of their legacy. And obviously as well, Dust 2, all of the Dust 2 verticals, they don't cover esports broadly. They cover Counter-Strike, and specifically Counter-Strike. And I might go so far as to say that Swedish CS is kind of in the fucking bin. So that's just one of those unfortunate realities. But anyway, they got closed down, and then people started worrying and wondering, what could it all mean? What could it mean? Was it that HLTV could get shut down? Well, no, that was never happening. Would all of the Dust 2 verticals get shut down? And so Better Collective put out a statement over on Dust2.us, and it said, this is what the future of Dust2.us looks like. Dust2.us will undergo a phase of rebuilding to secure the future of the site. As you might have seen during the last couple of days, Dust2.us has been hit by layoffs, which means the now former editor-in-chief, Ryan Friend, is no longer with us. This is due to circumstances beyond our control, which have forced us to make cost reductions to ensure sustainable long-term success. This will affect Dust2 and result in Dust2.se ceasing operations starting today. Dust2.us will not be shut down as a result of this, but we have had to make a plan to be able to save the site. That plan includes a lower budget and a change in the organizational structure, which was presented to the current staff in a meeting on Wednesday. We will start this process very soon and expect to be able to fully launch the new structure and team after the Shanghai Major. I want to make it clear we're still very dedicated to operating a site that will help and support the North American Counter-Strike scene, but to be able to do so, we need to rebuild and make sure income and expenses are aligned. Before doing so, I want to thank Ryan and the rest of the current and former staff for their hard work. They truly took the site to a much better place during the last couple of years, and I am really sad it ended so suddenly as I enjoyed our cooperation. For Ryan and those who decide not to stay in the new structure, I wish them all the best of luck going forward, and I hope they end up in a good place. I know they did their best, and much more than I could have expected to create the best possible site, but the timing was just not in our favor this time. Stay tuned for more information about the future. I hope to see many of you use and support dust2.us in the future when we've digested all these sudden events. And look, I'll add to this. What is there to cover in NA anymore? You've got NAF coming out and saying you should just play Valorant over at esports GG, NAF on NACS in 2025. My best advice would be go and play Valorant. And specifically, that was just referring to having opportunities to be a professional FPS player. As you can see, I believe if you're playing in North America, you literally have zero chance to really improve or get into the tier 1 scene, he said to esports GG. There's a few opportunities. I saw some of my buddies from NRG be able to qualify for ESL Pro League, so obviously there's those qualifications through for some tournaments, but that's pretty rough. When you sort of combine it with the direction that Dust2 have gone in, I think you can kind of understand the direction that they've decided to go in. I mean, look, these things don't happen in a vacuum. In fact, lots of important happenings all around the world didn't happen in a vacuum, guys. And what I mean by that is there's been this slow erosion of North American Counter-Strike to the point where it is practically irrelevant. One of the largest markets in the world, and it's mostly irrelevant in our game. Why is that? Well, let's go back in time. ESL stealing North American franchise slots for their partnered leagues and then selling them to European bidders and never getting them back. You've got evil geniuses pissing all of that Peak 6 venture capital up against the wall and doing absolutely nothing with it. In fact, actively harming the North American scene, and then somewhat comedically to try and make it look like they had a plan all along, bought a bunch of players that they then didn't play at events because of conflict of interest rules, having a roster of 15 from which they pretended they could build one roster of 5 that was going to be supreme, which never really manifested. And you sort of take all these little incremental things and we arrive at where we're at now, where we're so... Also, the inability to travel during COVID, having to fucking, you had to be willing to base down in Serbia if you wanted to get good boot camps going on, right up until like 2021 or whatever. Unfortunately, all of these little incremental steps have turned North American Counter-Strike into a fucking joke, even to the point now where the big orgs, Cloud9, they're a terrible Russian team right now. In fact, as I will never relent to point out, they violated kind of what was perceived to be the norms of doing business at that time by bringing in a Russian team from a Russian organization, by using a Norwegian proxy as the first step in doing that. And they've just been allowed to do it, so it's fantastic to see them fail, actually. But remember, even prior to picking up the Russian team, they had a mixed European team. They weren't giving back to NA, which was their bread and butter. Team Liquid, obviously, they've got some American players, but it's an international lineup right now. We've already talked about evil geniuses and what a fucking disaster that is. Complexity, they're technically, I guess, an international roster, and they're fucking really struggling. Not just struggling in terms of the game, but struggling to have any spending power, right? Struggling to get sponsors. And so after that, there's a huge fucking drop off. Suddenly you're talking about MAEs, suddenly, and elevates and orgs like this. So it's kind of crazy how bad things have got for North American Counter-Strike. And with that, where is the audience Where is the audience? So if I'm running a coverage site like at Dust2, how do I make it work? There was probably a period of time where if things had gone good for NA, creating a North American vertical would have been fine. You could have paid salaries to all of your staff, and there would have been loads to click on. You get the Cloud9 traffic bump, the Team Liquid traffic bump, would have all been great. That's not happening now. And unfortunately, North America is pretty much irrelevant in Counter-Strike terms, or certainly it's arriving at that final destination. Now, here's the part where I'll shock you, and again, it's got nothing to do with the video, but we're just padding this out as a nice little sort of 40-minute, little mixed bag of topics for YouTube. I don't really care. Sorry. I don't care that you broke your elbow. I don't care that you broke your scene. I don't care about that. The North American owners have had more money and more opportunity than their European counterparts, than their Russian counterparts, than their Ukrainian counterparts, than their Chinese counterparts, than everyone else in the space, and they have absolutely failed at every turn and harmed the very fabric of the esports industry in doing so. Right? So no sympathy. I'd love to hear a comprehensive reason as to why any esports scene has to have North American involvement. Why does it? There are a number of scenes that are dominated by India, and maybe they don't have a lot of European engagement, or dominated by China and don't have a lot of Western engagement. Why do we need North America in Counter-Strike? Right? All they do is push up the fucking salaries. You know what I mean? The fan base is insufferable. They're really bad at the game. Like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? And so, while I've got friends who will totally disagree with that take, Jason Lake obviously being one of them, Captain America, I just feel like if North America's final FPS destination is Valorant or fucking whatever else comes out in the future, or Call of Duty, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. I don't care. I just want to see good teams. And right now, we've got good teams. Just none of them are American. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Again, I'm sure that'll be deeply unpopular with a lot of people, but who gives a fuck at this stage? Anyway, back to the point. With all of that in mind, obviously, American coverage sites for Counter-Strike are going to taper off in the same way that the scene has. So, for me, while I have a lot of sympathy for Dust2 employees affected, it kind of was inevitable. I certainly hope Jeff gets another opportunity somewhere. After 6 hard years, he should be in a much more senior position, in my opinion, and I definitely think he's got the skill set and chops to do it. Maybe there's a world where Dust2 could offer him the editor's job, but at a reduced salary of what you would normally pay an editor, and keep him around, and maybe you can rebuild like a phoenix from the flames. I don't know, but certainly no tears to be shed about Ryan. Dust2.se, I can't even imagine that was doing numbers at all, so definitely shut that down. And we'll keep an eye on all of the others, because ultimately, Better Collective, I think, kind of waded into this and bit off a little bit more than they could chew, most likely because they were misguided, because they have a portfolio of sports and sports betting websites, and unfortunately, esports audiences are very, very different. A lesson we continue to learn on a daily basis.